Welcome. And we would like to go ahead and take the roll call.
Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Fuller?
Present.
Gapel?
Present.
Greer?
Present.
Harris?
Present.
Vice Chair Smith?
Here.
Chairman Vieira? We have a quorum.
And at this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Fuller, and the invocation led by Reverend Maxine Schultz from Revealing Truth Church.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. If you'd like to close your eyes and know that there's one spirit guiding this meeting today of the Justice Commission in Lancaster. That spirit is going to guide and bring to the floor the best outcomes for all concerned as the meeting goes on. We're grateful for that spirit. We're grateful for the guidance. And we look inside and accept the guidance as we feel it within ourselves, hear it within our ears, or see it with our eyes. Spirit is always present and always guiding. And for this we give thanks and we say Amen.
Thank you very much. As you see, Chairman Vieira is not present today. He did have another commitment, and so I will be chairing the meeting today. First on our agenda is presentations. I do not believe we have any today, so we'll move on to public business from the floor. This is a time for citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item. Please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. And unless there's someone filling out a card now, I don't believe we have any speaker cards for agendized items. Next, right. Okay, we'd like to take a look at the minutes from our last meeting, see if there's any corrections or if they look good. You can call for a motion for approval if everyone feels comfortable with those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the June 9th, 2010 meeting. Can I please have a vote? Passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cobalt, would you like to go ahead and give a presentation on the monthly crime statistics?
Thank you. Just 1 second. The data that we're going to be looking at today covers the time period from May 30th to July 10th. That's going to be 6 weeks of data that we're looking at from our last Crime Commission meeting. As we move through the data and we see the 6 weeks up there, you can see we started out in week 23, which was 530 to 625. On kind of a high note with regard to Part 1 crimes. And again, I want to remind the Commission that we tend to run somewhere between about 65 and 95 Part 1 crimes. That's kind of the range that we're in. So when you see numbers like these up here, generally we're within the range that we're shooting for, and that's by frequency. Now again, with these numbers as well, there could always be some variation between what we have, or the numbers that we have, and the numbers that the Sheriff's Department has, simply because these are actually numbers that we could that came with good solid addresses and that we could geocode with our system. So if there's some slight variation there, that kind of explains why there might be that variation. There are crime reports that they take where they don't have an address, or they don't know, some victim doesn't realize where it's at, and it's hard to put that on a map. Week 24, we saw a substantial decline in Part 1 crimes. We went from 84 down to 52. 25, we were back up just a little bit. 26 and 27, we kind of had a slight progression. And then in week 28, you can see it dropped off again. Now, one thing I would caution you on with week 28 up there is the cutoff date for that was last Saturday at midnight. So some of the crimes that could be reported this week that would fall into that haven't shown up in the data yet. You can take a look in the next column down, or the next set of rows down, where we talk about violent crime arrests, property crime arrests, and I didn't figure the total arrests for this time, or didn't get them into this particular data set. But you can see that the Part 1 crime arrests remained relatively constant across the board, and the unique uniform report numbers actually showed a little bit of a started out a little high, 626, dropped down to 581. Then in week 25 went to 586, 599. So those were really fairly constant weeks. And then it dropped down to 482 and 486 for the report numbers. As we look across the weeks for frequency of Part 1 crimes and the most active reporting districts, you can see in week 23 that was 1137, 1133, and 1131. And again, my next slide will be the most active for the entire time period, combining all of the data, and I'll show you where those are on the map. Week 24, we had 1135, 1126, 1127, and 1137. Week 25, 1126, 1135, 1192, and 1121. Week 26, 35, 27, and 37 again, and it goes on across the board. Let me just jump to the most active reporting districts then for the time period involved. The most active reporting districts for the geocodable Part 1 crimes were 1135, which had 47. To give you an idea of where 1135 is, is generally, there's a slight variation there, but generally Challenger Way over to 30th Street East, Avenue H down to Avenue J. The offset in it occurs up north of Avenue I, where it goes over to 15th Street. But you can see the Part 1 crimes as they lay out there in that particular reporting district, and you can see where the areas of concentration are. The next area was 1137 that had one less geocodable Part 1 crime, and that's 1137. If we go to 1137, we can see a lot of the activity was centered up along Avenue J and along 20th Street East and along Avenue K. Reporting District 1126 had 45 reported Part 1 crimes that we could geocode, and this is 1126. Essentially, 1126 is this rather narrow band from 20th Street West to 20th Street, or 20th Street West to 10th Street West, from J down to Avenue M. And you can see the concentration there. In fact, this is one area that we kind of identified in our meeting with the Sheriff's Department last month as a potential area that we want to kind of keep an eye on. And that is this area that runs west of the freeway, south of Avenue K. You can kind of see the impact that that's having on that particular area and driving that rate just a little bit. This area over here is going to be the commercial area over there. You're going to have a certain amount of activity around commercial areas, but the area that really kind of drew our interest is this area that's over here, south of K, west of the freeway. And then we have 1127. As we take a look at that, we can see a lot of there's a couple of things going on in 1127. First of all, you've got the larcenies that occur over around Valley Central Way, and that's pretty much on everybody's radar screen as far as what's going on right now. And I believe the Sheriff's Department and the city manager are working with a variety of folks to try to get some attention to that area. In addition to that, you'll see south of Avenue J, between about 30th Street West and 50th Street West, we have a few property crimes in the neighborhoods as well. And those would be burglaries and I believe there was one auto theft here. Then the one reporting district, while it reappeared in the top 5, was 1121. The good news is if you take a look at the frequency of 1121 versus the other reporting districts, you can see that it's down to 28, which, that's a good thing. And a lot of resources have been devoted to that particular reporting district to deal with those issues.
Show the commissioner something on this map, though,
Sure.
how you can bring up. What we did last month when we met with the Sheriff's Department is, what's good about this. I'm sorry, you never need it, but okay. I'm sorry. Is that we can actually bring up a photograph, of the area so we can see what we're dealing with, whether it's multifamily, single-family homes, commercial buildings in the area, business, whatever it is in that area. And so it helps us when we're talking about strategies on how to manage that area and what we're trying to combat. And because we have different situations in multifamily that we normally have in single-family neighborhoods, those type of things, from a allocation of resources by the captain and Lieutenant Doughton. So that is something it's kind of a neat program to be able to bring that up and look at it as the layout of the community and what's in those areas. Here in Lancaster, we have an unusual situation because we have multifamily housing throughout our community, from city border to city border, where in a majority of other communities throughout the county, there's some density with multifamily versus single-family homes. And it's more consistent because they've been there for years. They were built communities at the same time. Here we can deal with properties that were built in the 40s all the way through to properties that were built in the last just few years adjacent to each other. So it makes it unique for us when you're talking about dealing things on a criminal activity basis. So, but it is kind of neat how we can bring this up, and this is something that we're working towards making available out there through a crime watch issue that is publicly accessible, so people can see what's going on in their area.
This goes back to that area that I was talking about that's south of K and west of the freeway. When you can add a map to it, you can take a look at it, you can see exactly where the problem is happening, and you can see what some of the environmental factors are around it. One of the things that you can see there is a lot of the activity that's going on in this particular area is inside of an apartment complex that
Large complex.
that worked its way onto our radar screen last month as a result of this. In addition to that, one would have to speculate that some of the crimes up in this area are potentially somehow related to some of the activity going on down there, or at least there's the possibility of that. So these are all things that we're kind of keeping an eye on right now. And again, having the ability and the software to be able to take a look at those things is an important issue for the city to be able to work with the Sheriff's Department, manage resources, and coordinate other city resources as well. Any questions?
Well, what do you do in the case of like large apartment complexes? Do you work with the management of what is the process?
Go ahead.
Well, first it's identifying what the issues are, and then, of course, the management would be a huge resource for determining who's problematic in the area. They're going to have pretty much, this particular apartment complex has a very proactive management group there, and the actual property manager's been there for a number of years and works very well with the Sheriff's Department, the land cap team, along back with the Housing Authority, and so they have a good relationship. They're the first ones that usually have a good idea who's those problem people are within their own communities, and usually what you find is that they've already identified that with some notices or some historical issues with those individuals. And then the next thing is that for the Sheriff's Department to make a determination on how they're going to address that. Times of day, occurrences, times of the year, whatever the issues may be, and how it relates to outlying businesses and things there to combat those issues. And so you just formulate a plan, and you develop that based on the individuality of each issue and move forward with it. It's a large complex, so you're going to have a certain expectation of what's reasonable. Where do you set that threshold based on what the issues are? But that one, luckily for us, is that we do have a very good relationship with them, so we're able to deal with the issue.
Great.
Excuse me, I had one question, Lee. In that 1126, the area you're talking about, the south of Avenue K, besides the larger apartment units that I'm aware of that are in there, there's also some good size senior units in there. So one concern I would have, as he's talking about today, Jim's pointing out there seems to be some increase in there. Seniors are probably a little more vulnerable than the average citizen, and so if we have a specific problem with some units, even if the management's being proactive and taking a strong approach on this, I'd be concerned just to see if we could keep some additional resources there, in as much as you've got a couple of substantially large senior units in there.
Well, the captain could probably relate to you more about how they're assigning their units out in the area, and it's based on that. The station has worked very diligently to bring the data information source up to date. It's current, as far as I know right now, or close to being current.
It's probably as current as it's ever been.
So it's more manageable because we can look at the data as it's new, and then the captain and his command staff can determine how they want to allocate those resources. On the side of it for us is that we want to promote like our neighborhood watch or senior watch groups in that area. Adjacent to that property, we have a number of other apartment complexes. Some of them are HUD direct-based contract buildings where they're a private owner who has a contract direct with HUD for low-income qualifying tenants, those type of things in the area that impact that. But we do have a very strong group in that senior area, and they're in that area off of 16th Street, 15th Street West. They're close to Avenue L. They're a pretty active group. We here at the city, they're on a neighborhood watch network with us that Megan set upstairs through Google, through Yahoo. So these groups talk, and so as information comes to light, we can notify them. Hey, this is the kind of activity we're seeing out in your area. We need you to be our eyes and ears over in that neighborhood, and be a diligent witness and notify the Sheriff's Department if you recognize any suspicious activity. So we're constantly doing that on a daily basis, working with those groups out there. And again, the fact that the station and the captain have addressed the issue with data, brought that up to speed, that has been a huge help for us recently on how to determine where to manage those resources.
Okay. Any other questions on the layout of the 6 weeks? If not, we'll take a look at the 52-week chart. Now, within the scope of this 52-week chart, bear in mind, we are always in the far right on this chart. We're always looking backwards towards the left. So as you take a look at that, you can begin to see how crime lays out temporally or by time in Lancaster. And what we've done is with this 52-week chart, we look at each individual Part 1 crime to try to determine whether or not we're having an effect on it. Now, the good news is, as you take a look at the chart, we have only one particular crime that is on the increase right now, or trending on an increase, and that is murder. And as I mentioned before, that's a very low frequency crime for us. If you take a look at this number over here, this is the number 2. 2 murders over the course of a few weeks can really skew our numbers in that particular area because it is so low for us. If you have 1 or you have 2, that really makes it look like this is our trend line right here for it, this black line, and then the red line is the frequency. So as you take a look at that, you say, wow, we're really trending up in it. Well, that's kind of an anomaly in the data. It's not as bad as that trend line would suggest. In fact, if you compare us to other cities of this size, that particular crime is pretty low. In fact, that's one of the interesting things as you take a look at Part 1 crimes in the city of Lancaster. Our violent crimes historically have been very low. Now, the good news is for the other Part 1 categories, everything else is right now, as you take a look back over the 52 weeks, trending either flat or down. So that's very good news for us in terms of that. This shows our frequency of rape, and you can see that right now the blue line here is our baseline as it goes across, and for rape we average about 1 a week over the time that we are measuring these. And again, our baseline goes back to about 1997 up to the most current year. So you can see we're a little bit above our baseline, but still our frequency is about, we're hitting right now about 1.5 per week versus the one per week for our baseline. Again, a very low frequency crime for us. Still serious, but it's low frequency, and when you look at the variation in these numbers or the trend line, it can be a little bit deceptive as you look at it just because of the anomaly in the data. Now, robbery is a little more frequent crime. We average about 6.08 robberies per week, and you can see here our baseline and our trend line, or our trend line is well below our baseline, and for all intent and purposes, the baseline for robbery is pretty flat. So that's good news for us. Assault, we average about 16.68 assaults per week, and you can see where our trend line is here, and it's got a nice downward slope or negative slope, and that's something that we want to see. You can see our baseline way up here, so we're well below baseline when it comes to ag assaults. With regard to burglary, when you take a look at this, you can see our baseline is up around, we average about 24.57 burglaries per week. Our baseline is way up here. You can see where our trend line is down here. And again, it's another one of those crimes that's essentially flat. When you take a look at larceny, we've got a slight downward slope in the larceny category. Again, we've had a few spikes in it, but still, when you look back over the 52 weeks, you can see where we are now and where we were then. Grand theft auto, again, here's our baseline, and here's where our frequency is, and you can see the downward slope as well. And then finally, with regard to arson, You can see where our baseline is, but again, arson again is another one of those low-frequency crimes. We average about 1.12 arsons per week, and so if we hit a week or a couple of weeks where we have 2, again, that throws our numbers up and it makes it look like we might be going up. But for this case, it's essentially flat. Any questions on our 52-week look back? Okay, if you would, then let's look at your maps that have the frequency by reporting district that you have in front of you. As we take a look at that, at this map, I'll turn off the actual crimes. And you can see how things kind of lay out. Again, this is the 1135 and 1137, and 1135 and 1137 have been the subject of a lot of discussion over the course of the last year in here. You can see 1121 did not make at least the red category. It's still down in the orange category. This is 1127, and we've talked about that in 1126. So many of these areas we've already discussed. You can see on the maps how the frequencies seem to be in relatively the same places from month to month as we've reported them to you. Again, with the exception of that good news that was up in 1121, that it's coming down just a little bit. If you take a look at map 2, that's kind of our grade card for the previous time period. Map 2 is the one that shows you the spatial trend analysis. As we take a look at this particular map, you can see, again, as we look at it, the red areas are the areas where, when we moved from May to June, we show an increase in those particular areas in crime, and in the green areas, that's where we had a relative decrease in crime from the previous period. So when we're measuring June to May, we can see where progress was made in the green areas and where things elevated on us in the red areas. Again, what's interesting is if you take a look at that, you can see many of the same areas that we've already talked about. You know, the area down south of K, west of the freeway, some of the areas over on the east side in 1135 and 1137. And then the areas up along there is one dark red area that showed up in 1121, right up in this area up here. And that pretty much is the spatial trend analysis for analyzing or comparing June to May.
I have a quick question about that. If 1121, if there is showing an increase, why would we say
Well,
the
if you remember-
frequency is just one area of 1121 and perhaps the other areas dropped?
Yeah.
And so it balanced out?
If you remember in the last Criminal Justice Commission meeting, 1121 didn't make the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually number 6.
Okay.
And so it moved up just a little bit. But again, as we looked at the raw numbers, It's still a drastic improvement over where it was, considering we were running probably 30 plus, 40 plus Part 1 crimes in that area within the last, probably 4 or 5 months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the spatial analysis map?
No, just a comment to follow up on what Vice Chairman Smith said. In 1121, it's actually interesting. It looks like 1121, the very southern edge of that along Avenue I, which is filled with more of the older homes and units, duplexes and fourplexes, where there tends to be more problems. That area on your spatial trend chart shows that there's actually decrease in what I would think would be the more challenging areas of 1121, and yet where the newer subdivision stuff is more to the north, that seems to, that area may have a slight increase, but overall it's always great to see 1121 that it's not red. You know, and it's terrific.
And in 1104, that's kind of interesting because I'm comparing to previous maps, the kind of upswing of residential burglaries. I mean, when something like that becomes, suddenly you have 5 burglaries in that one area, what's the process as far as addressing that?
Captain or Lieutenant Doughton?
Sure. That would be really under the purview of the Berg suppression team, and what they would do is get to work on identifying, any identifiable, aspects of the Berg, such as, what time did these happen? How close together were they? Anything that they could come up with that would give them workable information, and they do a really good job at that. So whenever we do have those types of instances, they're usually solved very, very quickly.
I have a quick question. Captain, we hit 1121 real hard. Are we going to hit 1135 or any of these other areas? Is there anything on the agenda for targeting these?
There are, and one of the things that we've decided to do is, take a look at all these thefts. I like to call them, they look like little goggles all over one of these maps here. We've decided to go ahead and use the LANCAP team for a while as no-call cars. So we're going to have probably 4 two-man units out in the field addressing some of these busy areas as no-call cars. And, we kind of believe that, based on what we know about the circumstances of some of these thefts, they're not happening all in one place, and it's not one specific type of thing that's being stolen. They're fairly spread out, although we do see some problem areas here, and it's not something that surveillances and some other types of police work do a good job to stop. So just getting some more manpower out there and checking up on suspicious people and putting a little more resources into those areas, I think will help us. So that's the plan right now.
Right. I know that you put the top team out there, and we hit over 100 parolees' houses out there. Are we going to implement that in something like 1135, or will we need to, I just feel we need to do something like that because it worked.
Sure.
Is that something we can work
Sure.
together?
No, that's definitely something we can do.
Okay, I'll implement that with my supervisors, and we can get that taken care of right away.
Sure.
Okay, good.
The last thing that we have to present is the forecast, and the forecast for June was pretty much spot on. We forecasted 361 Part 1 crimes for June, and we ended up with 356, so we didn't miss it by much. For July, we're looking, or the forecast is for about 351 Part 1s, and that's within a decent range for us, within the scope of staying where we're at or bringing things down just a little bit more. And then the other thing that we have to, where we see the next spike will be along the time of the the fair out at the fairgrounds. So if we're going to anticipate that, that's something that needs to be got in front of. That's about all I've got.
Great, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, we'll move on to arrest statistics.
Yeah, Kent Krager is on vacation, and so we're going to not do that presentation this time.
Okay, thank you. California Highway Patrol update, Captain Hoos.
What would you like to know? We have
What's happening?
What's happening? With summertime, we have an increase in DUI arrest, not overly significant, but a little upturn, which has been helpful. The warm weather is going to add a bit to it. Our 4th of July weekend was a good weekend. We had low incidents of crashes, and we had low incidents of DUI crashes specifically. As far as the collisions, it's kind of quiet, which is nice. It's always pleasant when it's not raining. And I know we don't get a lot of rain up here, but when we do, everyone thinks it's a snowstorm. So it gets exciting there. The last quarter, we're up in citations around 6%, and our collisions are down around 4%. So things are good in California.
Do you think that the DUI, have you increased DUI checkpoints, or is it just kind of running?
We have a checkpoint coming in August, and we have a checkpoint coming in September. So we added one that we hadn't previously scheduled. The checkpoints are really good for public information. They're good for bringing people out. It's a deterrent more than it is a catch. Normally in a DUI checkpoint, you might arrest, you'll see 200, 300, 400 cars, and you may arrest 2, 3, 4 people. But everyone knowing there are checkpoints out there helps them quell their drinking, identify where they're at, for their sobriety. And it's an advantage.
Great.
And so we publicize them as much as we can.
And I just have to mention that I know that the last month has been like a horrible month for the California Highway Patrol as far as losing all the officers they lost. And I think we all have to remember the CHP, I'm a CHP family, so I'm going to always be so supportive. But, people I don't think realize the dangers that these men and women put themselves in every day just doing their job out on the highway. So my condolences to the CHP family over.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a difficult month. It was we lost 4 officers, all 4. In fact, 2 in one day, which was unusual, completely unrelated, but all traffic.
Yeah. Okay, any questions for the captain? Okay, we'll move on to the report on Neighborhood Impact Program. Commissioner Harris.
Good morning. This week, we're going to be giving away vegetables again from the garden. It is growing tremendously, and I think now every single person in the neighborhood knows that there is a community garden and that it's for them. So we are still working on trying to get more people to volunteer and just letting them know that this is for them so that we can begin the process of turning it over to that community. As well as we are still doing the regular programs that we are doing for the kids so that they have some place to go and stay out of trouble. The open house for the wellness clinic is next Friday from 9 to 11. So that is happening, and then the people will be able to know the services that are being offered from the wellness clinic for them. Right now, we're preparing for the October Workday. This is a massive effort that Neighborhood Impact does, and we usually have anywhere between 800 and 1,000 volunteers that come out to paint the homes at no charge. We're also going to target Sunnydale School because it's in a lot of need of painting and so forth. The Wellness Clinic has been identified for the Mariposa area, and it has a huge lot in the backyard, so a community garden is going to be put in there. And then the open house for the Mariposa, the actual Neighborhood Impact House, that open house is going to be in mid-August. And I have to say, I want to reiterate what it is that we heard last week. We cannot do this without the help and support of the City of Lancaster. And I just want to thank the City of Lancaster for helping us with this. The City of Lancaster is the one who did the preparation for the garden. Yes, we're going in, and we have lots of volunteers that can do that, put the garden in, but it was the City of Lancaster who worked together with the Prime Desert Woodland Preserve so that we could have that garden. It is the City of Lancaster who has provided these homes. Yes, we're leasing the homes from the city, but it is in cooperation with the City of Lancaster. The workday, we cannot remove 80 tons of trash from a neighborhood unless we have the City of Lancaster backing us up by bringing in dumpsters, bringing in city personnel to help with the trucks and be able to take all of this out. So it is a great partnership. And I just want to reiterate that again, that we just thank the City of Lancaster, and we're so grateful that we have this partnership.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to the Neighborhood Watch update.
Oh, okay. Recently, we reorganized the Neighborhood Watch program within the City of Lancaster, and I've related that before here. We broke the city into the core areas with the 4 core areas with the deputies that manage each area. And then what we've done within that is we've set up a structure with the neighborhood watch groups into area coordinators. So we have groups within there that are coordinated for zones. So basically in each area, there's a number of neighborhood watch groups that have come together in a zone. And we have about 22 zones throughout the city. And the reason we did that is we wanted to develop a better way to disseminate information out to the groups, and then for all of them to provide information back to us and law enforcement. And so far that's worked out really well. We're going through the process now of picking out who those zone coordinators are going to be within those groups. We've had 3 meetings as of recently here with those block captains to develop that structure with their input. And we've tweaked it because it's been kind of an open discussion on some things that they'd like to see incorporated into that. And what we're going to do is, as we have these meetings, instead of having 6 or 7 individual neighborhood watch meetings where we're just providing them with information, it's more interactive to deal with issues as it relates within their different zones, and we're going to have those in big area meetings within those core areas. So, for example, we'll have, for one core area, we'll have a meeting at one of the high schools, and we'll invite all the neighborhood watch groups and the zone coordinators and all those folks to that meeting, and we'll disseminate that information that we want to put out as it relates to whatever issues might be going on at that time. And then we're going to preempt that meeting by having them provide topics that they want discussed as it's dealing with programs or issues or things that are taking place out in the community. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, we talked about putting everyone in those Yahoo groups. We've now incorporated all the neighborhood watch groups into that Yahoo groups where we can send information out to them. And Megan is on that group all day, as I am as well, and I receive information from them, and we pass that on to the Sheriff's Department or whatever appropriate agency with what is taking place there. So far it's working out very well. It was an adjustment from the way things were done. I think it's a lot more proactive now because people are bringing forth issues, or if we've identified certain things, like Jim said, we have a rash of larcenies in a certain area, the people in the shopping centers around town, or people are, car burglaries, whatever the issue might be. We had a recent case where we have an individual who was actually going into people's backyards to recover the recyclables out of their recyclable bin, right? And then literally going in their yards, okay? And because of that, we put that out there to those neighborhood watch groups, and then we ended up with photos of him, license plate, vehicle. People saw him over at the recycling center. So it actually came together really well. And, it's not the crime of the century here in the city of Lancaster. At the same time, though, it's more of a problem-solving issue. And so that has gone very well. We have some plans to incorporate some other things into that as we put that information out to those groups, and just what's appropriate, what's emergent, what's not emergent, some of the neighborhood issues, simple things. We came up with a process for dealing with barking dog complaints. Animal control had a 2-year backlog of barking dog complaints, if you can imagine, and just working through the groups and addressing some of those problematic folks, we've been able to resolve about 95% of those without having to take any kind of enforcement action whatsoever, resolve the problem. So it's, it's quality of life issues we're dealing with. So it's gone very well so far.
As far as those larger zone meetings that will be held or that are held, do the commissioners get informed as to when those are? So they
Absolutely. I would encourage that. I actually have a schedule, too, for meetings, presentations that we put on here. I'm going to be doing a Section 8 presentation. That's always a hot topic out there with the neighborhood watch group, so that's going to be coming up next month. I will put that out, so I invite all the commissioners to attend that. And it's a good time for these folks to get to know you as well and exchange that information and have that relationship with the Crime Commission. Yes, and well, that's something the next thing I was going to. On the group, not anyone can just join the group. Okay, we screen the folks that come into that Yahoo groups, and I'd like to add all of you on that group so you can see the exchange of information that's going on, and it'll just be an email account.
prior to screening us, huh?
Pardon me?
Prior to screening us?
No, I'm just putting you in there. You've been screened already. Lieutenant was in charge of that, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we'll put your bios out there and everything too as well to the groups.
Great.
And your personal contact information.
No, thanks.
No, okay. But anyway, they're very active. We have some really good groups, and we've added about 9 new groups just in the last 3 weeks.
Great.
So
I'd
there's
love
a real
to be part of
huge
that.
interest out there. So.
I think everyone else would, too.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd just like to commend you for the great work that you're doing with the Neighborhood Watch program. I think that it's an outstanding program. The more aware that our citizens are of what's going on around and working together, the more active they are, it's going to have a direct impact on reducing crime. So great work. A little bit of a chance to talk to you about that. I think the Yahoo groups is a really good way to disseminate information and keep the groups active. Because, once you get them formed, most people are excited at the beginning, but then later on, keeping them active, keeping them informed, keeping them engaged is a problem. It's difficult to do, and so having this structure is outstanding, and would really like to have access to that as a commissioner as well. I think that, as you see, we don't get large audiences for the meetings, and part of the reason for the commission is to represent the citizens and to see and hear from them directly in that fashion from neighborhood groups who are concerned about their neighborhoods and the issues that they're presented with, I think would be helpful to the commission.
Well, I think it's good, too. We can, put the minutes from the meetings out to those groups so they can see what's going on. If they have a particular interest, or put the agendas out to them as well. And if they have some issue they want to bring forward to the commission, they'll have an opportunity to do that. And this is, we're kind of in a growth stage of this. We don't have all the groups in there. Megan's working very hard. Megan Cannell, that works for me upstairs, is doing a fantastic job with this, putting this together, and she's encouraging all these folks to participate actively. So,
if your zone coordinators are aware of the fact that that this commission is also actively involved in that group, or at least looking at what's going on, then they in effect have our ears. Merely by participating. So it might be another incentive for them to actively participate because they know that there's more people that are listening to them at different levels and bringing forward some of their concerns.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll just keep moving forward, and I'll bring that to you, and I'll make sure that I get all your contact information from Megan. She'll contact you and get you signed up. And she even made a little descriptive how to log on to it, what you have to do, passwords, all those kind of things. That I'll make sure you get.
Any other questions?
I do. Is there representation from the Trend area where we have neighborhood impact for the Neighborhood Watch program?
A couple. That's an area that we're going to address. There's a couple areas around the community that we don't have a lot of participation in some of the neighborhoods. Some we have every neighborhood. I mean, we have one group that spans probably about 4 square miles of the city. They already had a network in place where they talk to each other, the different groups, and we incorporate that into this. That's something we need to go solicit, and we will solicit that here in the near future. We're just laying out the structure right now, and we've pretty much got that nailed down. So now it's about going out and recruiting people to be involved in this program. And, we have changes over. We've had a lot of groups that were active at one time, as Commissioner Fuller pointed out, and then they've not been so involved. So we're reintroducing this program back out into those neighborhoods as well to find someone else that might be a little more motivated as a block captain or a representative for their group.
I was thinking maybe we could help you.
Oh, that would be great.
With that. As we're establishing relationships with the people, then we can let them know about that. And so I'll talk to you about that after.
And,
See if
we
there's
could do
something
that,
can
like we could have like an area meeting like we've had in the past with the Corps deputies. And the Corps deputies they're amazing in this because they have that contact with those zone coordinators and those block captains out there. And they have, that communication back and forth as well. We could certainly identify a location out there that we can invite everyone from that area, and it would probably be fairly simple, especially for like the Trend area, because that's a very identifiable area, and bring folks to something and have that open meeting with them and encourage that recruitment.
I have one question, Lee. You mentioned one group that's 4 square miles. That sounds really cohesive and strong. What do you think the biggest reason is that particular area is so successful as far as getting everybody's involvement?
They had a couple neighborhoods within their area that had some very active block captains. I mean, they really took ownership of the program. And again, they have one gentleman who's very computer savvy. He set these things up within that, and it kind of grew from there. I met with them, by the way, those 4 individuals, just to understand how they had put that together and developed that relationship with the neighborhoods within their part of the community, and I took a lot from that. Okay, so I've gotten their input on this restructure and used them to help develop it. And they just basically went out and knocked on people's doors until they found people in adjacent neighborhoods that wanted to be active and participate, and they've done a heck of a job. They've done a really good job, and so that's kind of a model we're going to use them to help us recruit more folks into this.
Okay, then moving on, we'll have this presentation by Commissioner Goepel, State Budget Impact on CDCR.
Okay, thank you. As you all know, probably our biggest problem with the CDCR right now is the NRP and the early release into our community. Just an update on that. I just pulled the info on that today. In Lancaster, we have 177 NRPs just in Lancaster City. In the Antelope Valley, we're up to 304. Those are the results as of today. That's what they're giving me through our department. As far as losing anything in our department because of the state budget, we have just currently lost our community resource coordinator due to the budget. They let her go, but we are keeping in place everything that she has been doing. We'll be taking over her job. And basically what that entails is we're still doing the orientation for the reentry for all parolees coming out. We are still maintaining a food bank at the parole office and a clothing bank at the office. What we're also implementing for the NRPs, because we don't want to leave them out of the of getting reentry help, we have invited all reentries into our community to the orientations. We don't leave any NRPs out, and we're working with the institutions right now because only 10% of the parolees that actually come to our community are coming from Lancaster Prison. So we have to disseminate all the information to all the prisons of our reentry program. So we're working on that. It's quite an endeavor just to do that, but we are working on getting the information out so that all the NRPs have a way to tap into our resources at the parole office. We're also doing the weed and seed at a weekly basis at the parole office, which is a reentry program, which is allowing any person in the community to come, plus any NRP, plus any parolee. And what we do there is it's a program for reentry, more intensive. And at the end of that program, when they graduate, they actually get a suit and a tie and are able to get dressed up to go get an interview and help to get them a job. And we're offering that to everybody at this point. As far as the parole office, we haven't lost any agents. We're still fully staffed, and we have all the resources that we had before. So there is no impact on the state budget at this time as far as that. And we are being told to be very proactive with all the parolees out there at this point, and that's pretty much it. We really haven't lost anything. We've gained problems, but we haven't lost any resources. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Commissioner, just one quick question. It was mentioned, I believe, at a gang meeting down at headquarters here recently that when we go out to try to locate these NRPs, that we're only finding about 30% of them are actually living at their reported address. Is that pretty accurate?
That's very accurate. What happens is a parolee will give an address prior to getting out of prison, and a lot of times they give a bad address. Probably 30%, probably 70% of the time, it's a bad address. So when they report to the parole office, when they have a new address, when they get out, they actually find the new address of where they're going to stay. That's when they'll give us their new address. So because they're not reporting to us, they're not reporting any new address.
Anything else?
I'm sorry, just one quick question. Commissioner Capel, you said that you have this open invitation to NRP for this reentry program, that they can participate. What kind of participation level do you have on this basis?
Right now we just had a graduation a couple weeks ago, and 14 people graduated from that program, and that was our first class. We are getting more and more as we go along. It was the first class, so the participation is not where we want it to be, but hopefully we'll get it to the point of approximately 50 per class.
If I understand correctly, there's a group that meets and filters through the people that are potentially eligible for parole and makes decisions about who is the least risk to release with no further parole contact. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a task force team that's what they do is they will go through the criteria and make the decision if they are NRP or not. And it's based on serious and non-serious violations, and if they have a serious violation or a serious crime or a violent crime, they're not NRP.
And if I remember last time, I had the impression, and I'm checking to see if this is right, that there were some of these people that were released that were not particularly, that the Sheriff's Department was not satisfied with that screening process. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was our understanding, and maybe Commissioner Capel can kind of elucidate on this, but it was our understanding that although their last charge may have been a nonviolent type crime, their rap sheet, their prior record could include many violent crimes, and yet it was only that last charge that they were incarcerated on that was used as whether or not they were going to be placed on NRP status. So, in the end, what it indicated to us was that we got some serious bad guys that are being released as non-revocable parolees.
What happens is it is the full criminal history. When that was a mistake, I believe it was 600 people there was like 600 parolees that they deemed that were NRP that were not. But as far as I know, they've corrected that, and I don't think any of that impacted our city at all. But that has been corrected, and right now it is the full criminal history. If there's anything violent in their criminal history, they will not be NRP.
Is this a process? Where is this done? This screening process, is it done in various places throughout the state, or is there a centralized location?
Right. Prior to once it was. Remember, I was telling you that the parole officers were all screened. When that happened, it was done at Rancho Cucamonga. But now that is completely done, now they are screened prior to them being released. So every prison is screening them prior to the release of if they are NRP or not.
And this evaluation process and the people released is public information. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Would it be useful for the people released to the city of Lancaster for that to be posted? That is, not only who they are, but who the people making the decision for their release and the criteria they used. Would that be useful and informative to the public about the status of these folks?
I'm not sure if it would actually work because of the fact that, like I said, we have 304 in the Antelope Valley that we know of, but there is no condition that these people can move. There's no condition that the people that in LA can move up here. So we really don't know who is up here.
I was thinking more in the sense that every week or a month, a certain new group of people are released, and some of them are at least identified as being released to Lancaster.
There's nothing set up in place for us to know that because they don't report to us. So there's no way for me to know who is coming to Lancaster.
But they do give you an address. 70% of the time it's wrong.
Right. So somebody can say, a prisoner can say, I'm going to live, they have to go back to they're supposed to go back to their county of commitment. So if somebody did a crime in L.A., they have to come back to L.A. County. Now, they can put any address they want to in L.A. County, but when they put that in the prison, that's just what they're doing, is putting an address. Once they get out, who knows where they go?
I guess my underlying question is this: if there was daylight on this process of evaluation and release that the public was made aware of, would that affect the decision of who's being released?
I don't know. I don't know if that would have an effect or not.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the CERT update. Commissioner Fuller and Lee DeRico. Who wants to go?
Actually, we're fortunate because Captain Polgar is here, and I might ask him if he's okay with that to come up and give an update on CERT as well. And Commissioner Fuller is involved in CERT and some ideas that we have about implementing that into some other program things we're doing.
Sounds great. Welcome.
If I might mention as well, though, we have Lyle Talbot here as well as Courtsville Town Council and also a member of the Antelope Valley CERT Steering Committee. So.
Last name is Banks.
Banks. Oh, I'm sorry. Banks.
Good morning. I don't know if I am here to answer questions or just kind of give an opening statement. I'm prepared to do both, so I'm just waiting in your direction.
Just kind of describe, if you don't mind, where you're at right now and some upcoming things you have going on.
Okay. Well, first of all, good morning to you. Thank you for the job that you do. I'm a resident of the city of Lancaster. I've been on the Los Angeles County Fire Department for almost 27 years. And as a resident, I applaud your efforts here. This is a wonderful event, and I appreciate your commitments to keeping our community safe. One of the things that was addressed very recently within the CERT organization of the Los Angeles County Fire Department and Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department was implementing the CERT program. CERT is an acronym. It stands for Community Emergency Response Training. It's 20 hours of FEMA-based education where we teach people how to take care of themselves, their family and friends and neighbors after a disaster. We teach things such as disaster preparedness, how to set up food and water, the event that there is an earthquake, there is a power outage, and those people can be on their own for upwards of 5 to 7 days. We teach people disaster fire extinguishment, medical disaster operations. We teach them search and rescue so they can take care of themselves. Out here in the Antelope Valley, we have 20 fire stations covering about 400,000 people, and there's just no way for each and every one of those fire stations to take care of the needs of the people. So CERT is basically the answer to when that disaster strikes. Between the time that that disaster starts and the first responders are into that neighborhood, what are those folks going to do? And we bridge that gap with the CERT program. Well, we have block captains that are involved with the Neighborhood Watch program. Obviously, the Neighborhood Watch program is basically steered towards law enforcement. And when we originally designed this program, the CERT program, to be integrated with the Neighborhood Watch program, I was very excited because we've been trying to get the CERT program out into the community. We've been attempting to gain a lot of traction for it. We have between 3,000 and 4,000 people that have been trained in the Antelope Valley, and that's a huge contingency of individuals. The difficulty that we're having is locating those individuals. Where do they live? Are they staying connected with the various websites? Are they being connected with several of the training programs that we have, so that the skills that they've learned and that we've taught them aren't going to be perishable? So when this idea of integrating the Neighborhood Watch program and the CERT program came about, like I said, I was excited about this program. I'd like to make sure, though, that law enforcement is in fact okay with it, because although Neighborhood Watch has been selected towards the law enforcement, I want to make sure that we're not going to be diluting it with all risk disaster assessment. But I do have a story. My Neighborhood Watch block captain comes by the house about every several months and introduces herself and says hello. She actually took the CERT class, and I taught her with one of our classes, and she was flabbergasted by the information that she had picked up in that program. And I gave her some information to pass along to all of our neighbors, and I've gotten that information posted on my door, even though I'm the one that gave that to her. So it's a wonderful program. Those folks are out there beating the ground, saying hello to their neighbors. They know who those folks are, and I can't think of a better venue by which to do this. We have the luxury out here in the Antelope Valley of having a well-dedicated CERT team through the Sheriff's Volunteers on Patrol. We have neighborhood captains, such as the one that's behind me from the Quartz Hill area. And those folks are out there. They have monthly meetings gathered where they gather the folks underneath them and go over these types of materials. There's no proverbial cactus curtain between the cities of Lancaster, Palmdale, and the Antelope Valley areas of the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County. As far as we're concerned, CERT has no borders here within the Antelope Valley. So I guess that's about it, unless you have any questions as we begin this process of taking the Neighborhood Watch program and implementing some CERT folks into the neighborhoods.
And this is obviously a facet for us in this reorganization that I definitely want to make this a priority, and some of the things that we're doing just to provide information out there so we can, again, recruit folks in here to be actively participating in these programs that are offered. As far as I'm concerned, it's a significant part of public safety as it relates to the community in the Neighborhood Watch, and it is a perfect venue for getting that information out to them. You're having a training class, correct, this Saturday?
Saturday, July 17th, Lancaster City Park, and we're going to be out there for 6 hours, and we're giving these people exactly what they asked for. When we survey them, we ask them, what more can we do for you? So we're having various law enforcement and fire officials that are going to be giving some very specific information. We're going to be doing handouts, and it's going to be a wonderful event. We appreciate the City of Lancaster's support for this event.
The city of Lancaster has obviously been working together with CERT, and you have an example with a refresher course that's going to be taking place this Saturday at the Lancaster City Park, and I applaud that collaboration. Captain Polgar had mentioned the potential for conflicts between the Neighborhood Watch program and the CERT organization, and personally I see them as complementary rather than conflicting. In that when, and again, Captain Polgar had explained the type of training that people receive, but when you start thinking about, okay, well, disaster preparedness, disaster relief, crime reduction, how do they fit? CERT graduate, of which I'm one as well, taught by Captain Polgar, is over 1,000 people have been in the Antelope Valley, are taught to be observant. They're taught to document what they see and the actions that they take. They're taught to recognize threats so as not to put themselves in danger. They're taught to act responsibly and not as vigilantes. And they're taught to help first responders do their jobs. To me, that sounds a lot like helping out in law enforcement as well. All of those skills are directly applicable. The people who tend to attend the CERT training, I mean, who are they? They're people who are concerned about their safety and the safety of their neighbors. They want to be involved in their community, and they're willing to help. So as you're putting together a Neighborhood Watch program, this revised program, it seems to me that the fit is perfect. We run into some of the same obstacles in the CERT program as we do in the Neighborhood Watch, in that you leave a CERT program excited with a little bit of enough knowledge to be dangerous, and then what happens at that point depends on the individual and the leaders at the community level. So where do you go with it? How do you keep people involved? How do you keep people excited? And how do you keep them trained, right? What are the refreshers that are available to them as well? And there needs to be a reason why somebody stays involved in an organization. In a neighborhood watch, it might be because of I'm concerned about crime in the neighborhood. But maybe my neighborhood isn't the one where I'm really concerned that much about the crime. I mean, everybody doesn't want it to hit them, but you still want an active neighborhood watch within that neighborhood. So what about protecting ourselves in the event of a disaster? I don't think that people in the Antelope Valley question whether there'll be a disaster, especially living here on the San Andreas Fault, but it's just a matter of when. Should we be prepared? How are we going to be prepared? How are we going to help ourselves? How are we going to help our neighbors? And how are we going to help those that surround us? To me, the same goals on the sides of Neighborhood Watch as well as CERT. So when you start to combine those two organizations, it allows for better dissemination of information to people. It also makes it less confusing, and it provides more opportunities for people to say, that's something that I want to become involved in. And I think that there's a lot of challenges that CERT is facing that we might bring up as well for consideration, because the Los Angeles County Fire Department has been supporting CERT and CERT training for a number of years. But unfortunately, they're facing some of the budget constraints that every agency, public agency is facing. And it's easy when you have the training of volunteers, citizens groups, as one of the agenda items that are one of your budget lines that might be cut, to cut it, should there not be enough support of it from the community. And I think it's important. I would like to see this commission, therefore, recommend to our city council that they publicly support the program. Now, I don't know if that's possible in terms of funding, but I believe, if nothing else, in terms of priorities and how that fits into the city's plan, especially for emergency response. I know that the city of Lancaster just underwent a complete renovation of the emergency response plan for the city. How does CERT fit into that along with Neighborhood Watch? It becomes an important component, I believe. And to make that statement to the Los Angeles County Fire Department at the appropriate levels, that we see and recognize the need for supporting CERT here, I think could be useful at this point in time. The other thing that Mr. Dorico and I talked about earlier, as well as Captain Polgar and I, is wouldn't it be nice if we could have at least one CERT-trained individual in every Neighborhood Watch group? More than one would be even better, but if we had one, then we start being able to coordinate throughout the entire city, not only at the level of crime, but also when something really happens that requires citizens to respond. The whole idea behind CERT is that in the event of a disaster, that your first responders will be overwhelmed. They will not be able to respond to each individual community, neighborhood, excuse me. So we're going to depend on people in those neighborhoods to do the first assessments. And they're going to do it whether they're trained or not, because people won't sit around and watch the people die in their neighborhoods. They're going to help. Wouldn't it be better if they had sort of an organized way of gathering information, assisting one another, so that when the fire department, when the sheriff's department, when others arrive, they can provide them with standardized information and say, this is what's going on in our neighborhood. This is where we need help. Here's where the people are most critically affected. And we have such a wonderful system of communications that's being developed, as described by Mr. Dorico earlier through the Neighborhood Watch program. It wouldn't be a stretch to add the disaster relief component to it as a component of Neighborhood Watch. Things to look out for, ways to be prepared, training opportunities. That linkage that I think could be a whole lot stronger. So I'd like to suggest that to the extent that we could, to incorporate our CERT and the CERT information into our Neighborhood Watch. And then the final recommendation that I would have would be that if the Antelope Valley CERT steering committee is willing to do so, would incorporate a member of either this commission or the city of Lancaster as a member of that committee to help with that coordination effort.
Can I make a suggestion then? Since you're so well versed in it, Mr. Fuller, that may be a really good job for you if you're interested in doing that, or if the commission so desires.
If the
I definitely want to be a part of it. I'm fortunate because Megan has been a participant in CERT. She went through the training. She's well-versed in it, and I've had some discussions with her as well. And it's something that I'm going to do at some point here as time allows, because I'm interested myself, and just to make myself more familiar with how that will help me, how to incorporate that into the other things that we're doing.
Well, should the committee or should the commission like to do that, I'd be happy to.
Well, I would support that wholeheartedly. I know Commissioner Fuller's been very active in this program and in fact kind of spearheaded the effort, helped spearhead the effort with our Rotary Club. And I know you're very passionate about it. So I think it would be a really good fit, really good fit. And I'm with you, Lee, that I actually signed up for one of the trainings, but I did have a conflict. But when you sign up, I'll sign up and we'll go through it together. Okay.
Well, thank you for the support. We actually have another class that we're just announcing. We haven't done so publicly, but we can certainly give you that information behind the scenes, and that information will be available on our website, antelopevalleycert.com. Thank you.
So as far as the recommendations that Commissioner Fuller has, would those be made in the form of motions or they're just simply recommendations? Because when you're talking about recommending to the City Council the support of the program, would that be something we'd have to put into a formal motion?
It's an action item, not an action item on the agenda. I don't know that you would have to formally approve it to direct staff.
Okay.
The direction from the commission will be.
Okay. Any support, opposition?
I think it's a terrific idea, and especially as much as Commissioner Fuller has the background and the experience with it, I think it could be perfect for that, and sending the message to the city through this commission. Also a liaison back to the council as well that can deliver that.
In terms of the Los Angeles County Fire Department, I'm sure Captain Polgar could help in identifying where that correspondence could be sent, yes.
Great. So it sounds like you have our support from what I can see. And thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Business Watch Subcommittee. I don't know that this is going to be a very long report because we're kind of in the middle of moving forward with this. But a couple of weeks ago, Commissioner Greer, Chairman Vieira, Mr. Dorico, and I had a meeting to talk about addressing some of the loss prevention issues that we're having with some of our businesses here in the community. And I know that I'll probably let you, Commissioner Greer, just kind of talk about our meeting, and perhaps you, Mr. Dorico, can talk about our next steps that we discussed and where we're going with this. So.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Smith. The meeting that we had, as the Vice Chairman indicated, involved Public Safety Manager Mr. Dorico as well. Most of the comments were repetitive in that we had brief discussions during these meetings about the fact there was, one or more larger retail outlets within the city, and there are probably going to be some we'll learn about that are smaller as well, but one or more larger retail outlets that didn't seem to be inclined to get involved in any kind of theft apprehension or intervention, we'll just say, within the store. And so the concern that was voiced here was repeated again in our meetings, or in our meeting, and the decision was made that the public safety manager, along with, I believe, representative from the Sheriff's Department, I think maybe Lieutenant Doughton, was going to try to arrange to have at least one meeting, and probably more, with some of these larger retail outlets, starting specifically with one or more of the ones that are more proactive, that tend to be inclined to intervene rather than just take information as someone leaves the store with merchandise. And the idea there was to find out how these other outlets do what they do without having any kind of serious interaction that involves somebody being hurt, but still helps with the crime problem. The idea was to start with them first and learn their approaches, whatever they would share. I'm sure none of it's going to be proprietary, but their general sense of how they do that, and then take that information and then go forward and, as a committee, meet with some of these other outlets that tend to be less active or intervening. The general feeling that I recall from the meeting was that most of the comments there were that if these large outlets are not if they're not really being a part of the solution, then they're just contributing to the problem one way or another, and that something needs to change there. And so I think after I know that the public safety managers made some efforts to set up meetings, and I think those are going forward here in the next week or so. After that, we'll hopefully have a lot more information to deliver at the next meeting.
Through discussions with Lieutenant Doughton and I, we've identified probably a very proactive business in the community that's a larger retail store that has a very good loss prevention program. I've contacted their management. Their actual regional loss prevention specialist is going to be in town next week. So as of yesterday, we were trying to coordinate a day next week that we'll have an opportunity to meet with him for a couple hours and pick his brain, and he would be the one, according to them, that would walk us through their process, how they developed their program, what protocols they have in place, and then how they disseminate that information out to their local retail centers and how to work that. And they're very interested in working with us on that because they're quite proud of their model. Good. And how they developed it. So I'm hoping by this afternoon to have a couple different days and times that I can put out to the commission members on the subcommittee and have that meeting. Great. So hopefully I will be talking to you later today.
And what I like too, and I don't know if you agree, but I think we have the opportunity to impact some of these, the ones who have had challenges in a much broader sense than just the city of Lancaster. So from what we talked about, I think a lot of businesses can benefit.
Yeah, I believe this is going to be a really positive thing, and that's the approach in our discussion, that we want to form those partnerships with the business community out there to be proactive and to help us manage these issues as it relates to crime.
Great. Well, I look forward to it. Any questions? Okay. We will now move forward to public business from the floor, non-agendized items.
We request any person who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on non-agendized matters to complete a speaker card. You will find the speaker cards on the back table of the council chambers. Additionally, we request that you fill out the cards completely and print as clearly as possible so that if necessary, the commission or city staff will be able to contact you either by phone or mail. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. When you approach the podium, please notice that there are 3 lights. The green light comes on when you begin, the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red light will come on when your 3 minutes are up. We ask that you be considerate of the allotted time to allow other speakers to have their 3 minutes as well. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the commission meeting. State law prohibits the Criminal Justice Commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff.
Thank you. And we do have a speaker today, Michelle Egberts. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm back. As you all have a folder in front of you, we had questions about non-revocable parole. I have provided all of you with a fact sheet. On it, it will talk about who is eligible and the risk assessment tool that they use, the CDCR uses to determine who is eligible and who is not. Those that are on commit, that have a conviction going into the prison and previous convictions of serious violence and validated gang affiliation will not be eligible for non-revocable parole. I am a non-revocable parolee that has moved from my address of record that I provided when I before I came out of the institution. I have since moved, and I provided Deputy Wilson with my address. I called the Sheriff's Department and gave him my address. I am one that does not agree with non-revocable parole. I am glad that there's a partnership with the Antelope Valley Parole Complex now to involve the participation with non-revocable parolees, as it will be a beneficial tool for us to get the addresses, as I provided to them, my address, when I went to the PAC meeting. Unfortunately, to get me there, I had to call down to Los Angeles and talk to the Chief Deputy Administrator to get into the PAC meeting. And I encourage all of you to attend one. The PAC meeting is a parolee and correctional team. It is a requirement, a mandatory requirement for parolees to attend upon release. If they don't, they're in violation. You will find there, you will be able to mix with ex-offenders. You will be able to see the resources, the limited resources that are given there for people, of service providers in the area. Now, I have also provided you a sample of the statutory requirements for a non-revocable parolee. You will see on there that we do not have to provide an address if we move. We can move out of state, actually. However, there is a penal code that we have to adhere to as far as moving out of state. All right? However, we are not supervised, and I do not agree with it, and I'm going to make a difference. I called Washington, D.C. I'm going to see that we have a change, a moratorium of 90 days for a non-revocable parolee coming out of the state of California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, as we need some reentry assistance coming from the outside. As taxpayers, we invested $7.3 billion in 2007 to make CDC, CDNCR. Now, I think we would want to see a return from that investment. I brought to you my initiative for a reentry task force. It is a much-needed piece to reentry and to this commission to address the needs of the ex-offenders, juvenile and adults, coming back. Now, I'm just on the other side of the fence. However, I'm in my attire. I own a construction company. I would be happy to give my dump truck and heavy equipment to you, Ms. Harris, in your efforts, with your program. We can work together. I'm here on both sides. I'm for law enforcement, but I also want to help the parolees that are coming out with certified vocational rehabilitation efforts. I think any investment, any taxpayer is going to make a $7.3 billion investment would want to see a return on it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is commissioner comments. Does anyone have anything they would like to share?
Just the last speaker's comment that apparently parolees are allowed to move out of state without notifying anybody and leave. We don't do anything to change that. That's fine.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from anyone? Hear nothing. The meeting is adjourned until Wednesday, August 11th at 10 a.m.